just wanna talk about some books. Hey, I just wanna talk about some books. Talk about some books. Talk about some books. Hey, I just wanna talk about some books with you.
Hey everybody, I'm Jo,
And I'm JoJo, and this is Canonical Nonsense.
and we are just two average Joes talking about books. Today we're going to do something a little different. What is that, JoJo?
So today on the pod, we talked so much about what we would do if we were writing Fourth Wing or how we would change small aspects of it. So we got together and we wrote a little outline for a fantasy Fourth Wing. That would be What If Fourth Wing written by Canonical Nonsense.
Yeah, we decided to write a little fanfic outline of what we would change with this book if we were to rewrite it. And, if this isn't something that's interesting to you, that's totally fine. We just are doing this for fun because we think that there are a lot of meat on the bones of this book. We aren't, we didn't think that this was worthwhile to do for Blue Moon Rising or for Tooth and Claw, which were two other books that we had a lot of issues with on the podcast. But we thought that there was enough here with this book that just like small changes would have dramatically changed our ability to enjoy it. So we thought, why not? Because these were conversations we were having throughout the entire time we were reading. Well, what if this had happened instead? Or what if this character was constructed this way? So, if you're not interested, that's totally fine. Again, we're just doing this for fun. And if you have any thoughts or any, ideas of like, oh, I wish that this had happened too, we'd love to hear about that in the comments.
Next month on the pod, we'll be back to books, but right now we're taking our chance at writing for a little bit.
And again, just for fun, we know we're not published authors. We did get a note after the first part of Fourth Wing came out that Rebecca Yarros apparently only had 3.5 months to write this book, given to her by her, her publishing company. So it kind of makes me sad because I feel like if she actually had the time and the resources to really make this thing, how different it could have been and how much better it could have been. And it's sad too because of the success of this book, it really taught publishing companies that they could really force writers to meet these really stiff deadlines, these really short deadlines, and not give them that structural support that they usually do. No hate on Rebecca Yarros. We're just playing around in her space that she's created.
Yeah, it's always fun to play in somebody else's sandbox.
We thought we'd start by talking about some of our character changes, starting with Violet. So, the biggest thing I think we've changed about Violet is that she, in our version, wants to be a writer, despite her chronic pain and her body size, and that her mother wants her to become a scribe, like her father, instead. So she joins the writer's quadrant anyway with the help of her sister Mira. So this would just be a reverse of how it happens in the book, and that really simple change makes everything that follows a little bit easier.
Yeah. I think especially my biggest issue with this book is how frequently Violet rejects the call to adventure and just how kind of like not fun that is to read a book about a character that doesn't want to go out on an adventure or like doesn't want to participate in the book. So making her an active participant in making her want to become a writer, I think is something that really improves the book and gives it a little bit more juice.
Totally agree. I think one of my biggest issues with her character is that she's really incurious and we're told often by the narrative that she is smart, but she really doesn't seem smart in her ability to problem solve with what we're shown in the original work. So in our version, she would not be a total dumbass. Instead, the struggles would be because of her size. She's smaller than the other riders, as well as her chronic pain. Part of her arc would be that she realizes that she needs to teach herself a new method of combat because she's not really getting the resources and the support she needs from these larger people that are surrounding her. And she is able to do research to find information that she needs, as well as, and we're going to get into the changes of Imogen's character, but she's also going to get the help through Imogen as well. We also decided that her disease is not magic, but is just EDS.
I think we've been spoiled by various people either in our lives or just through the internet, and it seems to be maybe some of her I don't know this because neither of us have read past the first book. Her frailty is somewhat caused by like magic her mom does. Not a fan of that, I have to say. Just make a character regular old disabled, not magic disabled.
Yeah. We also wanted to structure, and I think this is pretty similar to how she's at the beginning of the book, that she is idealistic about the Empire. Her character arc would then include her learning that she is a tool of the Empire, and this would give her and Xaden something to bond over. We also added that she would enter the Dragon Quarter because she loves dragons and is interested in studying them specifically, and understands that the only way she can really get close enough to a dragon is to be part of this section of the military. When she enters the quadrant, she's surprised by how many people are indifferent to them as an animal, as a creature, but are instead only interested in them as a weapon and a status symbol.
Yeah, I think a really common trope that we see in dragon books is the protagonist having a love for dragons. And I think the joy and love that the protagonist gets from dragons, I think really brings the reader into the world and instills. I mean, that's what we love these books, and we love them because the books love themselves, you know?
Yeah,
So it would be nice to sort of see that love more often. Also, it allows you to do a lot of dragon exposition.
easily. Yeah.
Yeah.
To pay homage to her dragon scale corset without giving her one, because in this version it would be unnecessary because it is less of a dangerous space that she's entering into. We decided that she instead would collect dragon scales from the different dragons that she crews, and we're going to get into what crewing will mean in a minute, and is able to study them as a biologist would, which would show us how her intelligence kind of functions instead of, the book just telling us she's smart, she's smart, she's smart over and over again.
Yeah, we went back and forth. We think no two-tone hair. I just don't think it matters in this book. It's such a weird thing that doesn't matter, so we're not gonna include it.
Maybe it matters in future books, but again, we haven't read those. So we're just going off of what we learned from this book. Are you ready to move on to Zayden?
Yeah. Can I talk about my pitch for Xaden that we did not go with,
Sure.
but I still wanna put on the pod?
Oh, yeah.
So this might not mean anything to anyone. So there's Sailor Moon musical productions that they put on, and all of the characters are women, including Tuxedo Mask. So Sexy Lady Tuxedo Mask is a character, and I really like that because Sailor Moon can't succeed without Tuxedo Mask, but Tuxedo Mask can't save the day. So it's like a pretty good dynamic for a love interest. But Joe has not seen any of the things we're talking about, so we instead decided on Hal from House Moving Castle. Do you want to explain more?
Kept asking JoJo, I was like, is it like this? Is it like this? And every time she was like, no, it's not like that. And was really trying to explain it to me. And I think I would have to actually watch Sailor Moon in order to understand it. But when I asked, oh, is it like Hal from Howl's Moving Castle? She was like, close enough. So we kind of wanted to make Zayden a little bit less of an edgelord and a little bit more silly, like Howl. So he's very dramatic, very what's the word? What's the opposite of risk adverse? He's willing to take some really strange risks.
You can tell that we're not huge risk takers because we can't remember the word.
Yeah. He doesn't have any, what is it called? Self-preservation skills. So he is willing to take all these risks, and he's really loyal to the people he loves and cares about, but he has these very strong anti-war sentiments and these very rebellious sentiments against, the powers that be, which is like Hal from the movie, probably a little bit more than the book Hal. But we wanted to make him a little sillier, a little bit lighter than the Xaden in the book. So he's still going to have a dark side and some edge to him, but he's not going to be as nihilist as he is in the book. So we also changed that he's still a hostage of the royal families from after the rebellion ended, but we decided that he would have been taken when he was much younger. So perhaps they decided that every child 10 and under was able to survive or was able to live, and he maybe was still the oldest, and that would mean that he was 10, so that he was raised more fully while being a captive of the empire and while being a hostage within these royal houses.
It just fixes a small thing that really annoyed us, which was like, I think Zayden's like 17 or something when his dad dies. And they're like, all right, well, now you're fully under the control of the military. And it's like, you would go younger. You wouldn't want someone that old,
Yeah.
that like stooped in. Propaganda is not the wrong word or the right word. Ideology. Someone less stooped in the ideology and like an adult that you could possibly mold if you were going to give them what equates to an atomic bomb, which is a dragon. So it just felt a little bit more normal for us to, and more like logical to make the rebellion longer ago and him to be younger when it happened.
Also, it gives more opportunities for trauma, which is always kind of a fun way of adding tension into a book. Fun's not the right word, but you know what I mean. We constructed his character so that he pretends that he is conformed to the Empire and is a willing weapon, but hides reformist sentiments. We also decided that he would be better suited as a second year, much like Dane, instead of a third year. and we wouldn't give him shadow magic.
Some of the ideas that we bounced around when we were talking about Xaden is a little bit like Theon. Is it Theon from Game of Thrones? Who's,
Yeah.
yeah, basically a member of other family who is like raised within a family, sort of a more historical basis of what Xaden would have experienced
Yeah.
for the like kind of situation that Xaden could have grown up in.
Yeah, like, apparently Vlad the Impaler was also raised in a hostage situation, like, he was a political hostage when he was a child. That's it, Theon wasn't actually real.
Sure, 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 sure. I've experienced Theon. You've experienced history.
I actually just learned that. It was quite interesting. Okay, moving on to Dane. I think Dane is very similar in his idealism surrounding the Empire and also his inability to separate these feelings from ideas of innate goodness and badness in who he associates with and refuses to associate with. I wanted to add that he and Xaden dated for a bit, but they broke up because of their conflicting beliefs surrounding Empire.
This is not a thing that we thought we should fix in the book. We just thought it would be more funny to have a triangle that completes all of the sides.
Yeah, and also he and Xaden do have some chemistry in the first book, I believe, and it just doesn't make sense to me that they didn't date.
Reread all of Dane and Xaden's fighting with with the thought in your head that they used to date, and the scenes are
They make
better.
more sense. We also wanted him to be a little less toxic, but more brainwashed. So his arc will be the opposite of Violet's, where as she becomes more radicalized in these reformist beliefs, he becomes radicalized in the opposite direction. Any other things to add there?
That plot line would set Dane up for book
Oh,
two,
yeah.
which we are not writing and not reading. So a lot of this stuff is vague. This is how we would rewrite Fourth Wing, and then also how we would create some plot lines that would be in a theoretical second or third book, but we're not actually like painting those. So those are usually, we're just like giving hints of possible things that could happen.
Oh, yeah. So moving on to Imogen, we decided that Imogen should have the same chronic pain, connective tissue disorder as Violet. And this is part of why she has more of an edge to her. She's constantly in pain. She's having to deal with it and manage it herself. We also decided that she and Violet would bond over their experience. We would then look at the kind of nuances of privilege here. So Imogen has a slightly easier time than Violet because she is physically a larger person and is able to both visually fit in the structure of the War College, but also physically fit because she is the size that things are made for. But she also has a harder time because she is a rebellion kid and is facing a ton of stigma, a ton of trauma, and a ton of expectation. We also decided that Imogen is the one who decides to help Violet figure out her chronic pain and exercise regimen because she had to figure this out for herself and is wanting to help Violet on her journey as well. So a little bit better disability representation because this is generally how this works in reality, where people who have disabilities do have to figure things out for themselves and then are able to build community surrounding it with other people who have, the same needs as they do.
I mean, I have friends with the same disability and we swap secrets back and forth. And I find some of the best resources online. Obviously, I have like a physical therapist who went to school to help me. So there is some understanding and training, but like some of the best resources online are from other disability activists and other disability activist groups. So
We also decided to combine Liam and Riddick's character because Liam kind of takes Riddick's role in the second half of the book, and Riddick kind of falls to the background. So we decided to just make them the same so that they were consistent throughout. The relationship with Violet is that she thinks she has made a friend whose loyalty doesn't have anything to do with her relationship to the Empire. But when she realizes later in the book that his loyalty is actually to Xaden and therefore still is tied to ideas of power structure. We changed Rhiannon a little bit so that she is from a family who actually fought against the rebellion. So she would also be from that Tirish provenance, or I don't actually know if it's a province or a city or whatever, but her family fought against the rebellion in favor of the empire when the rebellion happened. And those who were fighting against the rebellion in favor of the empire in our version would have an elevated status because of that. So perhaps they were given land that was taken from people who rebelled, who were then killed or imprisoned. They, are part of this new money elite through that. So she has a status that was raised in her lifetime as these rebellion kids' status was lowered. And therefore, the rebellion kids distrust her and she distrusts them. Jack We changed a lot. He comes from a rival family to Violet, so he is also an elite member of society, which explains a violent sentiment and is still a physical threat to Violet's safety, but is much more subtle about it and doesn't just indiscriminately kill people. More like seething threat rather than an obvious one. And then finally, the final character that we really changed is Sawyer. So we kept Sawyer as a second year. We also created him as a kid from an elite family, but we decided that we want him to be not a dragon rider, but someone who wants to run a flight crew. And we're going to get into what that means in a minute. Even though his parents want him to bond a dragon, because people who are bonded to a dragon are the higher in the higher echelon of society, he really does not want to. But that will lower him in terms of class. We also decided that he would be a dragon nerd and is more interested in the functioning of the human dragon relationship throughout the flight crew rather than a bonded relationship, which are two different things. So through him, we would understand that there's a tension between the class of the riders versus the class of the flight crew. And he would also act as a bridge through his characterization and through his interest to the larger network within the other students who are training to be crew members instead of riders.
I think the biggest thing is we decided to make Rhiannon against the rebellion so that you have Xaden on one side and her best friend on the other. So it like creates kind of a pull and some tension there, even though we don't have the same arc with Rhiannon that we were planning with Dane. We'll talk about it, but she stays more with Violet than Dane. And then also Jack was just such a flimsy character that we decided to put him in give him a little bit more substance by literally like giving him a family and like people around him that he could interact
Sorry,
with.
your cat is meowing.
Yeah, so my cat Lark has never been pet in her entire life and is miserable about it and is heartbroken, and I don't know how to make her stop. But anyway, yeah, basically we made Jack a little bit more complex. We made Rhiannon as sort of like a weight towards. All right, my cat is going to continue to scream through the rest of the podcast. So enjoy that. Her name's Lark. She's beautiful. And Sawyer kind of exists to just give us a way to talk about more dragon stuff and exposition and stuff
And
like that.
also gives Violet a character to talk to regarding her dragon nerdiness, so it's not just all in her brain reciting it.
Yeah, the dragons are really
Oh, yeah.
different, which you sort of mostly see in Sawyer's character, and it's more based off of our favorite stuff from different books. Do you want to go into it?
Sure. So the dragons themselves, in this book, it will be dragons versus Weaverin. We don't have griffins because we felt that that was too. We don't need a hat on a hat. Those who are not bonded to dragons still communicate through body language. So we still have the regular dragon bond that's magical, where people can communicate telepathically with their bonded dragon. They share emotion, they share their life together. But those not bonded with dragons can still communicate through body language and some simple language. So, like in the Summer Dragon, the dragons can make some words in human language, but they have trouble getting their mouths to form the words. So, they also will learn some of the dragon's grumblings and sounds, what they mean. But the dragons aren't completely isolated, they're surrounded by people constantly. So, this communication is something that needs to happen. And dragons themselves can understand regular human speech as well. The longer someone spends with the dragon, the more they learn to understand them. We decided to also allow each dragon to have a flight crew. So like in Temeraire, the dragons are so large in Fourth Wing that the dragons would make sense for them to have an actual crew that crews them like a ship. So that crew would also develop an empathic connection through leaking magic. So the dragons are leaking magic, which can have kind of an addictive outcome to the riders. And this is why the bonded rider dies if the dragon dies. So this would explain that aspect of the relationship. The non-bonded flight crew would feel the dragon's emotions, but not necessarily be able to read their thoughts or anything after a dedicated time with them. The dragons in this world are still in control like they are in the original book, but that will be more obvious through the events of the book itself. When the students work with the dragons, or when, the bonded people work with the dragons, because the dragons have much longer lives than their riders, some will have injuries or trauma, so they will need to be handled differently. For example, perhaps a flight position cannot be occupied in the same way on every dragon because of a weak spine or a missing patch of scales. Perhaps one of the dragon is partially blind from a previous skirmish or isn't able to deal with a certain sequence of sounds. This would showcase that the dragons aren't atomic bombs, but instead an imperfect solution to the threat of another aerial creature. Anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I think one of the things that we value is more normal stakes. Like, we don't need the best person to be the best at everything and with the best dragon and the best magic so they can blow through a bunch of people. We just want good dragons that are good at stuff and through the power of teamwork can achieve more things than they could on their own. And you sort of see this in the fact that we're like, there's still magic, there's still dragons, there's still bonds, but it's just a little bit less, you know? So I'm sure Sigale and Tayern are probably still big compared to their other dragon brethren, but you know, it's just it makes the stakes higher by not making everyone the most specialist girl or boy who's ever lived.
Yeah. So speaking of the dragons as characters, let's start with Sigale. We decided to make Sigale a revolutionary dragon. So part of the reason why she bonds Xaden is because of her reformist beliefs. Because remember, the dragons are really running the government in this version and in the original. So it would make sense that there would be a schism within the dragon's belief system. And she is representative of this. Perrin, who is still her bonded mate, is very conservative in his beliefs and wants to stand with the traditional ideology of the empire. And these differing views create tension within their relationship. So part of why he picks Violet is because of her family lineage, and he believes that she will uphold his beliefs, then realizes throughout the course of their relationship that he is incorrect.
Incorrect is maybe not the right phrase of it.
Oh, sure.
It's more that both him and Violet are now on the same journey together
Oh, yeah.
where they believe in the Empire and then they're both holding on to each other to sort of like Taryn's holding on to Violet, and Violet's too young to have ever really thought about it because she's been raised in such, you know, a gilded cage. And that together they sort of answer this question about whether or not they want to be on the side of the Empire or whether they want to be on the side of the Revolution. So it's just a way to have Taryn and Violet go on the same journey together.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I agree with that completely. Finally, Andarna will be either just their baby or an adopted baby. But she does not bond with Violet during threshing. Baby dragons in our version are becoming more rare, and they want to protect her. And I think we can keep the same thing with the magic system surrounding how magic is granted to the riders, where the riders are then able to help them create these wards to protect their landscape and to protect their land and protect their hatching grounds. But because they want to protect Andarna, because baby dragons are so rare, their ideology surrounding parenting her and how to protect her then is at odds. So part of the book would be that navigation.
I'm about to fight my cat for control of my mic. I'm so sorry.
Okay, go for it.
So no, I think I'm gonna win this fight. Oh no, she's literally nuzzling the mic. So now that we've talked about the dragons, do you want to talk about the worms? Wyverns, worms with a Y, because that's the kind of fantasy novel that we're writing.
Yeah, Weaverns are worms. We actually were writing worms throughout this entire thing, and I don't know why we chose worms. I think it was because that's what they are called in the Prior of the Orange Tree. But I think they're kind of similar to the Weaverns or the worms in the original.
I just assumed we were writing worms because it was literally less letters to write.
I think that is the reason why I did it, actually. You're right. But I think we decided that they would be similar to how they're controlled as kind of these automatons in the original book. And they maybe look similar to the dragons that are kind of like the zombie earth golem dragons in the summer dragon, or even the lesser worms in Prior of the Orange Tree that are kind of being controlled and manipulated by the kind of god evil dragons in Prior of the Orange Tree, but they would still have a person who is a magic user that is controlling and creating them. So that would be the same as in Fourth Wing. So we decided to talk about worms as we were trying to decide like where did these worms come from? Why do they exist? And why is there so much propaganda and uncertainty within the empire? So we thought perhaps we should keep the magic system the same in that you can either have magic granted to you by a bond with a dragon, or you can create magic and gain power from the ground, which is a destructive force. And that is a kind of more secret magic that the government of the empire is trying to conceal. So perhaps worms were part of the empire and were able to be pushed out. And this allows us to create a theme of information control and propaganda as they try to cover that this is a process that really anyone could tap into. It also makes the magic more complex because the government is trying to control the knowledge surrounding channeling, and that this is a very dangerous magic. And that the Venin, when they were successfully expelled from the empire, were able to push into other countries. So the empire closed its borders once they were expelled in an attempt to close or control this information. And then that allowed them to then the Venin to destroy the surrounding nations. So they now occupy these other nations and control either facets of or the entire governments and rule elite and send out armies of the nation's citizens who have been subjugated to therefore, expand their control both into the empire and into other countries that are outside of the empire.
Yeah, we're pretty fast and loose with basically like all other government. It's just because we don't see them in this book.
Yeah.
I'm sure if we actually wanted to go to a place, we would color in a little bit. Yeah, I think what we both, you and I, really liked the symmetry that Yaros creates between the dragons and the riders and the venom and the worms, where it's like an opposite relationship
Yes.
and like the evil one. So we really wanted to protect that and keep it. And then we just wanted to throw in with the worms some of the evil dragon stuff that we've seen in other books to give it a little bit more flair and a little bit more understanding, just a way of us to understand it.
And also give the political structure a little bit more depth because it is a little bit confusing in Fourth Wing because you're like, well, why are they trying to conceal this? Why isn't this a thing that they're allowing people to know? It's unclear in the book. And I assume that's fleshed out in a future book.
Yeah, I kept being like, are the dragon riders ice? Are they like patrolling the perimeter to keep people out? Like, I don't understand. I don't want to write or like border patrol, like, or not. So this is just how we sort of did it. So it's a little bit clearer.
Yeah, unless less like border control. Or maybe the same, but in a different way, not like ice. All right, so Army War College. So we decided to make it less cutthroat, but that the stakes are still high because learning to fly on a dragon is dangerous. The dragons will be watching the students and assessing the entire time. So everything the students do, every test, every action, every relationship is monitored by the dragons who are interested in initiating the bond. And if they see something they don't like, they can kill a student, but that doesn't happen very often. Students can still be petty and mean because there are fewer dragons than students to bond, and the majority of the students are actually going to become a flight crew for the dragons instead of a bonded rider, but they have to be very sneaky and subtle about it to avoid being seen by the dragons because the dragons will not like it if they are doing that. We also decided that they are not cut off from their families in the same way and that there are more interactions with the families and administration throughout because that allows us to have political scenes.
My biggest problem, meow, my cat is backing me up with this. The biggest problem in Fourth Wing is that there's just too much death that is unnecessary and unfelt, really. It's just like 100 people died, 200 people died, but whatever.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to be like everybody gets along and it's great. I want like 12 people to die through the entire class,
Yeah.
A number that is still horrific if you think about it. Think if when you were in high school, if 12 people in your class died, that would have been horrifying.
Yeah.
But murder isn't legal.
Yeah.
So when someone says follow the rules, people are like, well, murder's legal, so maybe I don't have to. Just like trying to keep it back in. Yeah, we'll talk about it later. We have a bunch of scenes with Violet and her mom and like other elites. So we just thought it would be nice if people could talk more.
Mm-hmm.
The elites will talk more with their family and see their family more because they have the ability to like pay to move, or they're also part of the army, so they'll see them. So poorer students wouldn't necessarily like, they get letters from home when Violet is going to see her mom a bunch.
Yeah.
So which is another way of talking about class, but really cuts down on the death and like allows for more people and more scenes.
Yeah, if you're not spending all this time rejecting the call to adventure, you can add more political drama into your book.
Yes! Oh my goodness.
So let me explain the dragon flight crews. Like in Temeraire, we want the dragons to have flight crews. So this means that they both have boarding parties so that they're boarding these wyverns, worm things that also have groups of people manning them or like on them. And we also have distance weaponry. So when they're practicing in the war college, they're learning how to be a part of a crew. They're learning how to communicate with each other. The captain of the crew is the person who is bonded to the dragon. And then their second in command is someone which is the person that is like what Sawyer wants to be. He wants to be the one who is really in charge of keeping order within the crew. The dragon can only communicate telepathically with the bonded person, so communication here is very important. Instead of having one on one, hand to hand combat scenes, we have flight crew scenes, where the first years and unbonded need to experience every role on the flight crew, so every position on the dragon, so that they can learn to understand it. They're running drills, and some of these drills will be dragon on dragon conflict, and others will be how do you like move around a dragon. Some of them will be, while they're in flight, how do you hit a projectile, or like how do you launch a projectile from a dragon without harming the dragon itself.
There's gonna be a bunch of cool scenes of fighting. Sometimes they're gonna be dropping bombs. We're gonna keep the hand-to-hand combat that I had such a problem with. We're just gonna put it on the backs of dragons, and it's gonna be more fun. And there's also going to be ranged weapons. We're not taking it away. We're adding to it. More, 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 more.
Yeah. Violet herself will struggle with this because she is small and her joints often will pop out of place. So she has a harder time moving around the dragon, climbing around it, as the handholds are sized for a much larger average person. This is a way that we can really create communication breakdowns as the students learn to communicate with each other and trust each other, and also learn who they cannot trust through these actions and through their actions during these drills. And then to speak finally about the magic system, the dragons leak magic. Everyone in close proximity to the dragon absorbs some of it, and this can manifest in strange ways in their environments. But the bonded have a much stronger magical connection. There's not a specific special X-Men style form of magic that each person gets, but people will have different proficiencies when it comes to the small and large magics. And then finally, we have the architecture of the War College itself. The War College should have architecture, at least in the Dragon Wing, that is sized for dragons. They should be able to look into all of the rooms and should be able to walk through all of the corridors, like in Joust. There should always be a dragon in the background of every single scene, and it should feel like the dragons are in control of their humans, and that the humans who are teaching these students and running these commands are only in command because they are the ones who can communicate with a group of people, and they are really the mouthpiece for the dragon's wishes. So they are going to be dealing with monumental architecture, which will make them feel really small and would give a really interesting sense of space. So we have large courtyards, we have dragons within them. We also decided that perhaps, the dragons, because they are the ones calling the shots, perhaps some of the professors are professors at the War College because their dragons have decided that they no longer want to fight. So there might be a dragon, maybe the dragon expert is a scholar, is a professor because his dragon is no longer wanting to fight. Perhaps they are using the dragon to do the most early interactions with dragons. So how do you mount a dragon? How do you interact with a dragon? And maybe this dragon is very food motivated. So in order to get into the cafeteria or out of the cafeteria, you have to give it part of your meal. And then it will be more docile or more helpful to you during these classroom exercises.
Basically, more dragons and more personalities.
Yeah, and we'll be able to learn the personalities of different dragons and how that this is a range through small scenes like this and not just really important earth-shattering scenes. Are you ready to start the plot?
Yeah, we started at the beginning of the book, basically where Fourth Wing starts off with Violet about to join a quadrant. But this time, Violet's packing for the writer's quadrant, and it's her mom that tries to stop her, not tries to force her to do it. And she's like telling her that she will die if she becomes a writer, and that she has to become a scribe, and that she trained for this like her father. We're still going to keep her father to be a scribe, and that was sort of the plan, and that she knows how hard it is in the writer's quadrant, and that Violet will never be able to bond a dragon, which would be a shame for her family, literally like a shame on the family. And at best, she will be a lieutenant. We have Mira arriving, and then she tells Mom that she will be the one, she will escort Violet to the scribe's quadrant. But what actually does is she sneaks Violet through a secret quarter, gives her the supplies, and then takes her to roster for the writer's quadrant. You want to keep going?
Yeah. Violet would still meet Zayden as she crosses the parapet, but she isn't a total freak about how he looks. Instead, I think she should, or we discussed this, she should remark that she remembers seeing him years ago when he was brought to the military base where her family was stationed. And perhaps in this time period, they had a sweet interaction. Maybe she gave him her favorite book to comfort him because she saw he was scared. Remember, he would have only been 10 or 11 at this time. She remembers a lost and frightened child, but sees none of that now, and that he seems very hard, cold, and frightening. He acts cold to her, and she thinks maybe he doesn't recognize her. She thinks that this is because he's the son of the traitor. How could she expect anything more of him? And then to keep herself calm, she, instead of regurgitating crop yield facts, she thinks about the rebellion and Zayden's connection to it. So then we can have the actual context of what was the rebellion in this scene as she is doing whatever it is that she does to cross into the White Rider's quadrant. It starts raining. She has trouble, but she is able to get there. And we decided that the parapet would not be an impossible bridge, like in Raiders of the Lost Ark, but is actually just some kind of course that they have to cross. And if they fall off, then they are sent to the ground army. So they aren't killing 20% of their initiates on day one.
Yeah, there's probably going to be some dragons off in the distance that get bigger as they get closer. It'll be a really cool scene.
On the other side, they are told by actual leadership, not just other students, that most of them will not become bonded, but will ride as part of a flight crew. Their first year will be spent learning the various positions on the flight crew on a bonded student's dragon. They will also be told that most people do not participate in threshing at all, but they stay with a flight crew of a bonded dragon when they graduate. So some of them will choose, I don't want to bond a dragon, I want to be on a flight crew, and that automatically will give them a leg up in the hierarchy of that flight crew. They will work with different dragons to learn the nuances of each, so they will rotate across and they will still be in a squad. So Violet is placed with Rhiannon, Imogen, Jack, and the Liam Riddick amalgam.
Should we call him Riam or Lydic?
Lydick?
Lydic?
Lydick, like, all right, Lydick from now on. And we will also have Sawyer there as someone who failed to bond, so we can have an illustration of that, and then we can learn, who he is.
I think we're gonna have a scene after this where like
Yes.
Violet is stopped by a dragon in a corridor. She has to be differential to it so that it doesn't harm her. It looks her over closely and it like investigates her. So this is great because then it's like sets the scene how like they're gonna have regular interactions with dragons. But the dragon is also Sigale. She'll growl and bare her teeth, and Violet will want to run, but she knows that like if she runs, the prey instinct will kick in, so she stands still with her eyes downcast. The dragon will lunge and snap at her and then fly away. And she'll realize after that, like after it flies away, that it was just testing her. So we still get some of that danger and just but like more dragon interaction.
Yeah. And also the rage of Sigale, which is interesting. So they are sent on drills to prepare for being on a dragon. So this can range from strength stuff to agility to marksmanship. Violet struggles because she's smaller than the others and has chronic pain that is actually chronic pain and not just plot convenient. So it will be in many of her scenes. We get interaction between characters. Rhiannon becomes Violet's closest friend, but dislikes and distrusts Lydic, as well as Imogen, because they are rebellion kids and they dislike her and Violet as well. Jack dislikes Violet because she is a rival family, and he dislikes Rhiannon because of her new money elite status, which means that he feels that she is inferior to him.
We do still have Dane, so Violet reconnects with Dane, who respects her decision to enter the writer school, but is still openly worried about her and talks to her about it a bunch. Like, we'll still have a couple of those scenes, but we will have not as many of those scenes, I promise.
Yeah.
Keeping the tension, getting rid of the repetition.
Yes.
So I added a bunch of court drama to this because I think I'm just still obsessed with Prior of the Orange Tree. So we're gonna have a homecoming celebration where like nobles mingle, because there's a connection between elitism and nobility and like higher positioning within the army. So you'll see that in the war college. So the homecoming celebration will include nobles and also high-ranking military members who are like one and the same, and legacy families are basically there to like show off their children. So we'll get some drama with Sawyer and his family because they want him to bond and he doesn't want to. We can have a scene where Jack talks shit about how Violet is struggling to all the nobles and the legacy family, which Violet knows really well, and he can like threaten her subtly. Like, I would watch yourself. People fall off dragons all the time, and you are so clumsy. So, a lot of the stuff we love, just a little bit tamer.
Mhm.
Zayden's gonna have to be there because he is like being raised by the elite, so he has to like perform for the empire to show that he's reformed and that he is doing well in his new position and that it was, right for him. He's a tool of the Empire, and it's like a scene where he has to perform for it. It is obvious that he is placed on a pedestal of both a reformed weapon of the Empire, but is also someone that is under constant surveillance. So he's being celebrated and watched. We want him to be like more fun and like social and kind of like a how character. And part of that is like watching him be a little bit slimy and dealing with the elites of this. So that would be a good scene of characterization for him. And then we also want Violet to have an interaction with Xaden where she sees this mask slip for a moment before he puts it back on. And he probably will say something cryptic about the war and the rebellion. That's both like a jab at her with the understanding that she's like participating in what the Empire is doing, but she doesn't seem to genuinely understand what he's talking about because she's not bought in. She's not read into like the Empire's secrets. She's just a member of the noble class, so she hasn't like learned all of this stuff. So when she's genuinely confused, it will disarm him somewhat, and then maybe he'll make a joke about her being a nepo baby. But it'll be a moment where both of them seem to have expectations of the other, and we see both of them realize that maybe they're a little bit wrong. Great scene.
Yeah.
We can have Rhiannon with being iced out because of new money or whatever. Maybe there's dancing. We're not really sure, but these are just some dynamics that we were interested in the party.
Yeah, and these could be split across a few different parties across the book. So this wouldn't all have to happen in the same night, but it could be, we could have these scenes where we are able to illustrate these ideas through multiple characters and how multiple characters interact with concepts of class and concepts of privilege.
We get some scenes where our characters are dancing, and specifically we get scenes where they're having fun, interacting with people, and just like not constantly fighting or being in danger. It's like it'll be a nice like reprieve that makes the other scenes feel more dangerous.
Yeah, and this can be where Violet maybe she watches Aiden eat a slice of chocolate cake and watches him savor it instead of her just asking in his brain, "Hey, what kind of food do you like the most?" Because, we want an illustration of his desire instead of just him telling us. So perhaps after this, Violet has some kind of interaction with Xaden where she realizes that he does remember her when they were children. Maybe he quotes or references the book she gave him, and he then gives her a warning. Dragons aren't the only thing you have to worry about here. He genuinely is confused why she's there. He asks why she's at the War College. Why does she want to become part of this quadrant? And her answer would soften him somewhat to her. So maybe she tells him her thoughts about dragons and about how humans really still don't know that much about them, regardless of the bond. So he realizes that she really has this intellectual interest in these creatures and this really genuine interest in these creatures. And she's not here because she wants the status of being a rider and that she wants to promote the same ideals that her mother has. So, the first dragon that the squad is placed with is Danes. They do drills where they go out onto a large plain outside of the War College walls. These practice areas are supported by small towns or perhaps land that was requisitioned from the college to do drills. So these towns are then asked to really support these creatures while they're there. When Dane arrives, perhaps he asks for a cow for his dragons, and the townsfolk have to give it to him. Later, Violet sees some of the rebellion kids sneaking off to give food rations to the town people. She realizes that they are stealing rations and confronts them, and they explain that they are just giving food to hungry people because the stipend that these people receive from the college is not enough to support them after the dragons come in with their drills because of how much food and supplies they're requisitioning from these towns. And then maybe we can have this as a hint towards why the Tirish people actually rebelled. And you mentioned that they are actually also secretly smuggling weapons, but Violet doesn't see this at this point.
Yeah, I don't want the rebellion kids to be neutered. I want them to be doing good things and then also, arming like they are like they're rebellion because they are doing a rebellion. All of this is just stuff that we can set up for like later confrontations, but it also gives us a look at the world outside of the War College, and we start with the elite and we see their parties and stuff. So it's a nice contrast to add a scene where you have poor farmers that are struggling, so you can see the disparity.
And we would also learn about a little bit about the supply chain because one of the questions we had with Fourth Wing was, what are these dragons eating? They're huge. Are there, in Dragonflight, there were these herds of aurochs that they were hunting, and the person who was bonded with them kind of controlled how much they were allowed to eat. In joust, the way that they're fed is part of the sacrificial religion practices of the people of the society. So they're being fed the meat that is coming from the animals that are sacrificed to their gods. So that was a question we had, like, where are they getting all this food? There's massive, massive predators. They have to be eating something from somewhere. So this also gives us a look into how these animals are being supported. So throughout this training, Violet really struggles because of her body. She does improve, however, because, and this is important to say because this doesn't happen in the book, she's able to make progress. All of the students are also realizing that they're being influenced by the magic of the dragon. So this could be shown in different ways. Maybe they get really hungry when the dragon gets hungry. Maybe their senses are heightened. Maybe they feel slightly drunk or claustrophobic when in small spaces for the first time after they start spending a lot of time with this dragon. Violet, throughout these scenes, also collects scales that the dragon drops. And she thinks about how its magic feels different from her mother's dragon.
We also want a couple scenes where there's like a breakdown in communication. Maybe someone is almost killed because they fall off. And because we established that the rebellion kids are in their own corner, Jack's in his own corner. I mean, he'll have other people. We didn't create lackeys for the part of this exercise, but he's got some guys with him. And Violet and Rian are in their own corner. And I think we'll see through these exercises them coming together and learning to trust each other or not trust each other in the case of Jack. Maybe somebody slips and Jack doesn't offer a hand or keeps walking.
Or yells at him and is mad at them for their weakness.
Yeah, so just different ways of bringing Violet and the rebellion kids closer together more naturally and slowly.
Yeah. And also to show that these characters aren't fully evil or equally good. So maybe Jack does help them sometimes. You know, he knows that he has to work with them in order to show the dragons that he's a team player so that he can get a dragon himself. So it could even look something like that. Violet realizes that Dane is giving her easier tasks throughout this time and gets angry because she has that real fear of people perceiving her as being weak in the original book. So I think we can keep this through line. So she confronts Dane and says that she needs to learn how to do these things. They have an argument. She leaves it in an angrily. Imogen then comes and talks to her. This is when Violet learns that Imogen also has the same chronic pain issue that she has. And Imogen tells her that she'll help train her. Dane, who is then angry at Violet for confronting him, gives her perhaps the most difficult or dangerous task, which maybe is on the tail or something that's really moving around the dragon a lot. And she slips off during this maneuver, but is able to be caught by Lydic. It is implied that Xaden told the other rebellion kids that she isn't a danger through these two interactions with both Imogen and Lydic. And later, Rhiannon remarks on the fact that Liam Riddick helped her, or Lydic helped her, because she really doesn't trust him. And she, kind of has this moment of her prejudice coming through.
Montage time.
Yeah, then we have a montage. They rotate through different dragons, and Violet studies each one closely, taking notes. She realizes that the magic leaking from each one feels different and unique, and begins to study this as well. She compares them to the fable records of dragons and remarks on the differences that they have with the wyverns, or like those fabled references to wyverns that she would have had access to because of both her father and her scribe training, but most people would not really know about. During their flight training, they sometimes have practice fights with other dragons. So they eventually will have a practice fight with Xaden's dragon, and there will be some kind of interaction that scares but also intrigues Violet. Perhaps they have a practice boarding another dragon, and she has to interact with Xaden where she boards his dragon. She makes it to him to capture the dragon, but something goes wrong, and he is able to catch her and save her, but then she's able to kind of turn it around.
Yeah, she sneakily uses his kindness to get him after he saves her in a very cute way, like it's a mock battle they're playing.
And maybe he says something that makes it a little tense, or something happens that makes it a little tense.
Makes a joke like never trust a sword, Gale.
Yeah, and she realizes her privilege.
Yeah, she realizes that they have a cute moment. Then he says something, and then they realize that they come from different worlds and maybe they shouldn't be friends because it doesn't make sense. And then they have to go away off on their separate paths. But they had that one moment together.
And that could also confuse her. She might feel like, I don't understand why that happened the way it did, because she still has all of these preconceived understandings of who Xaden is and who all the rebellion kids are that are starting to break down because of her interactions with the three of them. And the reason we added a scene where she actually does succeed is because she kind of never succeeds in the book. She's always kind of shit on and pushed into the mud. So we wanted to give her a moment where she has this moment of triumph. And then it's a little bit underscored by this acknowledgement that this person that she's starting to kind of feel some attraction to and intrigue surrounding is someone that she can't really be with and be around.
Yeah, I mean, she does sort of succeed in the book with the poisoning and stuff, but I think it's better after, most of a book, or at least a portion of a book, of her, eating shit on the back of a dragon, she is able to, like, beat Xaden in, like, a cute way, and that's more fun than her using knives to get up a warped wall.
Yeah.
We also it's important to me that we see her doing PT
Yeah.
as someone who spends a lot of time doing PT. So we have a couple of scenes with her training with Imogen, also her working through her feelings about rebellion kids, because Imogen's not fun to necessarily be around, but I think they can work through a rhythm that like works for both of them. They like come to a good understanding. We see Violet like struggle with different writers, some of which who are more or less accommodating than others. And then we see also Jack grow angrier because he sees her as a liability, but he has to hide it because he's got to be nice for the dragons. He isn't angry about Imogen though because he's terrified of her because she is mean and hot. It's an important thing that she's still hot and mean in this book.
Yeah, she needs to be hot and mean. I wanted to add a dragon bathing scene because I think it would be fun and cute. So they have to like scrub a dragon. It would also showcase how they care for the dragon outside of just flight drills and practice. How do these dragons exist in this world? And then we can have some tensiony things where people are able to see each other in fewer clothes in a flirtatious way. And we could also have a chance to really look at the rebellion marks, which is like an, oh, I didn't know they looked that way kind of thing. Or, to show kind of how aggressive they are on these characters. So we can have, this reveal of them from people who would be wearing a lot of clothes all the time because they're in the sky on a dragon where the winds are crazy.
Yeah, this is not quite the welcome back, Lark. This is not quite the volleyball scene in Top Gun, but it's not the volleyball scene in Top Gun, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't really decide on the rebellion marks, but we definitely wanted them to look less like a sexy tattoo and more like a punishment.
Yeah.
But we didn't want to get really body horror so it's just a vague idea. We don't actually have to write this, so we could just be like,
Yeah.
it's a mark. It looks bad. Moving on.
Yeah, we also, I think, decided that they weren't given by the dragons, but are kind of, they're not magical. They're just a mark that was given. Through this entire time, all this montaging, we hear students who are on different flight crews say and talk to Violet and the others that Xaden's crazy and that this scares people in Violet's group. And Violet starts to doubt what she feels that she knows about him from her few interactions.
Yeah, I think a thing that's important with the howl of it all is that no one should really know the true Xaden, and that's like something Violet works to figure out because that's really hot when someone's like, "I'm gonna know the true you." Mm.
Oh, yeah. And also, we can kind of build up the legend of Xaden and how he is told through different people. So we have another party scene with Jack and her mom and other elite folks. She is able to verbally spar with Jack, but Violet lets slip that she knows that some of the rebellion kids stole rations. She says it in somewhat of an innocuous way. It's something that Jack kind of catches her in. And then Jack then goes to the higher ups and lies to make it sound worse. So we either can have someone important hear it or Jack narks. Later, the school then will have a general assembly, which perhaps is something that they have often. And it's announced that the rebellion kids were breaking these rules and they are publicly punished somehow and humiliated. And they all know that it was Violet because she was the one who had that interaction with them when they were on the flight field, that first time. And it really breaks a lot of trust that she had thought she was building with Xaden, who is very, very angry with her. This upsets the other rebellion kids too, to the point that Imogen then rejects Violet's comfort because Imogen would obviously be very upset about this as well. She, would then yell at Violet saying that she's complicit because of her mother. And then we can get like a speech from Imogen talking about how her experience is so different and that how Violet will never be able to understand what it's like.
Yeah, this scene basically exists because we don't want them to get together too early. We're with you.
Yeah.
I think it should take a while. We noticed that they were getting closer together faster in our book because we had more scenes of them actually interacting instead of her being like, "Oh, he's so hot and scary" for like 2/3 of the book. So, it's just a little tension. It's also great because right after all of this happens, they rotate onto Zayden's dragon. Oh no, so awkward. Ugh.
Yeah, we give a lot of tension.
Yeah. Oh no, I accidentally tattled on you and your rebellion, and now we have to hang out on your dragon.
Yeah, it would cause a lot of tension.
Yeah.
Violet is nervous about this, obviously, because she knows she's the weakest in their group and is afraid to be under the direct command of Xaden, especially after what just happened. Throughout this process, she learns that Xaden is actually crazy like a fox. We learn that this is because he is the only rebellion kid to bond a dragon so far, because he's the oldest. And the other or maybe not because he's oldest, but just he's the only one that was picked.
There's less dragons bonding, just to clean it up a little bit, so Xaden's the only one who's bonded a dragon.
Yeah. We also learn that the reason he has to kind of do these more dangerous or seemingly crazy maneuvers during these flight practices is partially because of his status as a rebellion kid. So the other riders want to knock him out of the sky, want to teach him a lesson, but also because Sigale chose him as her bonded rider, the other dragons want to punish her and knock her out of the sky. So there's more danger with these drills against Xaden and his crew because of the sentiment and the schism that's forming between the dragons. So to outmaneuver them, he performs these, tactics with Sigale that are extremely dangerous but also really creative. So we would have moments where he's flirtatious and swashbuckling and takes maybe unnecessary risks during the maneuvers. Maybe he has a little bit of a flair in his choices, much like Howl. We can also see that he is the most accommodating to both Violet and Imogen's needs. And we learn that this is in part because he has known Imogen for such a long time that he understands her need for accommodation. But this would just make Jack even more angry because, again, he sees them as a liability due to their disability.
I've been fighting my cat. I a little bit lost where we were in the outline. So once this is happening, we will probably have a staged battle with another dragon, and they almost get knocked out of the sky. Maybe it's because Jack isn't willing to listen. This could be a good scene where Jack tries to sabotage Violet, and then we could have like a really heroic moment with Violet assisting, and then a failure on Violet's part. We kind of sketched this one out a little bit more than we have for other stuff. We thought we could have like a really cool like I caught you moment with Violet and Xaden, where Violet catches Xaden before he's gonna fall off the dragon, and then it like completely wrenches her arms out of her socket, which would like really surprise him. And then because after she saved him, now she's literally like armless.
Incapacitated.
Yes, thank you. She's incapacitated, and then he has to shield her immediately, and she then afterwards can tell him that she's, trying to improve and that she understands she will make mistakes, but she will try her best to learn from them and to be better. Just basically her saving him and then him saving her, which would be really beautiful, and then her acknowledging her fault with telling Jack the thing that he then like blew out of proportions and then got all of the rebellion kids in trouble, and her being like, I'm not perfect, but I'm working. And it would be a really good character scene for both of them. It's a good scene for their relationship. It's a good scene for Violet, who is not a perfect character, but is trying hard despite her disabilities. And then you'd have scenes of them holding each other, which is also nice.
Yeah, that'd be great. After this scene, Dane then will hear that they all almost died from a drill that went awry, and then is insistent that Violet try to sneak out. He tries to get her to leave, but she refuses. He realizes that she has a crush on Xaden and is butthurt. And maybe he realizes this before she even realizes it. And then he tells her to be careful because Xaden hurt him too, because they dated.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're closing the triangle is what we're trying to say. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So then they begin the war games, and their squad is selected by Xaden to act as his flight crew. Rhiannon is conflicted about this, and she feels unsafe, but is willing to take orders and follow chain of command. She and Imogen are also starting to build a relationship because we don't need girl hate in this story. Whether it's a romantic or a friendship, I don't care, but I want them to, have a good relationship with each other. Jack is just outright angry because he feels like he's above the rebellion kids and he doesn't want to report to one. So they have to travel into the field to simulate these battle conditions. Perhaps it's farther afield than they normally would because they're really trying to simulate this idea of being without a support structure.
They could be towards the end of the barriers.
Yeah. We can have some forced proximity scenes and flirtation. We can also have some drama with Dane and the other riders and the other squads. This scene could have some court drama with higher ups that are come to watch, and maybe this is connected to Dane as well.
So after they're selected to be under Zayden's flight crew, we have the scene that we sort of had earlier where they like travel towards where the edge of the barrier is, kind of like when Violet went to her sister's barrack. You can have some forced proximity scenes and some flirtation. I think what we'll have is probably like a higher brass will show up to watch some war games, and like maybe Dane will be a part of it, and we can see how Violet, the person he likes, and Xaden, his ex that he's weird about, getting cozier together, maybe pushes him to be a little bit, more into the structure and be more happy with being sort of like a lap boy to like the higher ups. We were thinking about like having a dinner scene where all of the higher brass are there, like maybe her mom is sort of like, there's a lot of like Game of Thrones inspiration a little bit for this, but I just watched the Egg and Dunk TV show.
Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
Yeah, and there's a bunch of scenes at the joust where like different tents are getting together and like having a party.
Mhm.
And I was thinking that not like that, but still sort of like have the elite together to have a party outside of these war games where Violet is pulled aside and tasked with a secret mission to stop Xaden's rise. That's why she was placed under Xaden. And they want her to act as
I mean, we said earlier that Xaden picked her, but perhaps they use Xaden because they're like, "Oh, he likes you, so he trusts you, so we can use this."
yeah, so they want to find a reason to kill or exile him because, for the most part, he's been playing the game and they can't find a reason, but they think he's amassing too much power because he has a dragon. She's very conflicted about this, and then she speaks to Dane, and he insinuates that he knows all about it, and then he tells her that she must. We're gonna have some war game drills because, it's a party. And like while they're there, it'll once again be like when she visited her sister, they are attacked by worms. There's gonna be a lot of confusion, and many of the students were not gonna know if it's part of a simulation or the games because they're in a place where theoretically worms can't be because of Xaden or Sigale's leadership and creative maneuvers. Everyone's able to make it out safely, and then they do some heroic shit because, of course, they do to save other dragon crews. And Violet is just sort of like stunned by Xaden's bravery and intelligence and power, and I think she decides then and there that she's like not gonna spy on him.
Yeah. This scene would also showcase that Xaden has no self preservation skills when others are in danger. So he is very protective as a person. Afterwards, Violet then tells Xaden everything she admits what they want her to do. And Xaden is actually excited by this. So he gives her a bunch. He's like, here, you should feed this information to your mom. That's incorrect. She's shocked, but not unhappy with this outcome, that he isn't angry with her, but instead trusts her enough to try to do this. Violet also feels the magic from the worms and realizes that it feels wrong. So she collects one of the drop scales from the worms. Maybe it's feathers, maybe it's a different kind of scale, and she studies it. And here she speculates as to why it would feel so different from all the other dragons, because she's acknowledging that each dragon has magic that feels slightly different, but this feels very different from any of them. So she's maybe thinking, well, they don't seem like they're just a different species of dragon. Maybe there's something else going on here. I think we can still have their flight crew or their squad win the war games. And though Violet, I think we decided, gets wounded on the final day, but no worse than she usually is. So maybe it's just like, a typical kind of wound that some of the kids get, or maybe something that she is able to really cope with because of her disability.
She dislocates a knee or an ankle like we see later in the book. Maybe
She gets like caught on the rigging or something.
yeah, so she's like down for a couple of days, but not too hurt. This is important because the next thing that we're setting up,
Yeah.
which is that she'll then feed the information that Xaden gave her to the higher ups, but it's pretty clear almost immediately that they know she's lied because, like, right after that, she's expelled because she refused a direct order. Publicly, they'll say that she's not physically capable because she's injured. And we just kind of wanted, since the whole book is like, will she be a dragon rider? Will she be a dragon rider? Will she be a dragon rider? And the answer is like so obviously yes. We really actually kind of wanted a scene where it's like, no, she's actually not going to be a dragon rider. She's failed out. And they say it's because she's not physically capable, which is like her worst fear, but it's actually because the Empire found that she wasn't useful for them, so they threw her away. So she packs her bags. Both Rhiannon and Imogen both say that she should be allowed to stay. There's like a scene where they're like, that sucks, man. They hug, but she knows better and she leaves. Dane asks her why she lied, and she tells him off. She gives him like a good speech. I'm sure it'll be beautiful if anyone ever actually writes it.
It would be heavily implied in the narrative that the reason they know that she lied is because of Jack, even though she doesn't actually interact with Jack throughout these scenes.
Hmm.
Or maybe she suspects it.
Yeah.
She leaves. Mira gives her their father's book and a pep talk, and she's really touched because I think we can keep that they can't keep anything after a member of their family dies, that her sister is able to give up her only possession that she had of their father. And perhaps it's her father's personal journal. And maybe it's something that Mira can't actually read because perhaps it's written in his personal script, but she can read it because she was trained by her father. So she reads it while she's in this convalescent state at home. She's in the dumps a little bit. And she reads it and she learns some information about worms. So maybe she finds out that they actually originated in her country. And this is something her father knew, but knew he had to keep a secret. And so she's like, oh my God, this is the origin of this magic. This is where they come from.
But she doesn't know a lot. It's a fairy tale, but we're like, oh,
Yeah.
she's putting the pieces together herself.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like, "Oh, I have the full picture now." It could just be like a, "Huh, that's interesting that my father thought to write this in his personal journal." But it's more than just a cryptic note that falls out of a book spine when she fucks Xaden later. So threshing then happens, and we learn that it is tradition for the elites of the empire to attend threshing by sitting and watching while picnicking. So, like, think people did that during medieval and even the Civil War. People did that too in the United States when the Civil War happened. People would like watch the battle, which is crazy. Well, they're not watching a battle, but it would kind of be that same effect. So maybe threshing takes place in a canyon or something, and they could be watching with binoculars or something magical, maybe magical binoculars.
The whole thing is that Violet is at threshing. That's the point. That even though she's been thrown out, she still has an elite status, and that allows her to sort of participate in this.
It also allows her nose to get rubbed in it a little bit, so she's watching this thing she can no longer participate in. But while watching, she then sees that there's a small feather tail in the mix and studies it because she's actually never seen one in person. You know, she studies it from that distance. She realizes that she's watching a baby dragon and senses that same weird magical presence that she felt from the worms. She sees it hiding, and maybe it's camouflage, maybe it's using some kind of magic. And she realizes that they've been infiltrated and tries to tell her mother. Because this is kind of a party to the elites, most of them are really drunk and are really not in a state to listen. So she slips away and into the canyon to help the Feathertail. So she's able to sneak in. She fights the wyvern somehow, or the worm, and realizes that she's not going to survive, but knows that she has to protect this creature when Terran appears. He is able to kill it, and then he bonds with her. So we get a mind bond description here. We would get this feeling of her connecting with him. We would get this feeling of it being of both of their own volitions, like they're choosing this together. And then we learn that if Violet hadn't been there to distract the worm, the Feathertail would have definitely died before Terran could arrive.
Yeah, at first voice saying she's not like fighting. She's fighting this dragon as much as you could fight a bear that was twice as big and breathed fire.
Yeah, she's distracting it.
The whole adage that you don't need to be faster than a bear, you just need to be faster than your slowest friend.
Yeah.
That's what she's trying to do. She's like, you go, Feathertail, I will get eaten. Or like, I'll like hold my own a little bit long enough for this worm to like fly away. And then Taryn shows up and is, a cool dude.
Yeah. They fly to the field where the other newly bonded dragon riders are, and then there's a kerfuffle because she was expelled, so she shouldn't be able to do this, but a bond is a bond for life and it can't be revoked. The dragons hold a quorum and decide that she is rightfully accepted in the same way that they do in the book, just about, She hasn't bonded 2 dragons, she's just bonded Taryn.
This is also why everyone's mad at her
Yeah.
because she doesn't even go here anymore, and now she's got, like, one of the better dragons.
She re-enters the school. She's welcomed home by Imogen, Lydic, Rhiannon, and Sawyer. We had a long conversation about who bonded a dragon, and we're not actually married to this. I think it's important that Rhiannon has bonded a dragon. I think it's also important that Imogen has bonded a dragon. Sawyer has not bonded a dragon, intentionally so, and I don't think we decided whether Lydic bonded a dragon, but I think maybe we said he didn't.
I think so. We still want people to have dragons, just less dragons, you know? Yeah, we moved threshing way further back because it's kind of like a weird midway point,
Yeah,
which is why we did it. And then now it's like not quite the climax, but
we're in the rising action.
yeah, it's definitely the rising action.
She also notices that Xaden is missing. So she's like, "Where's Xaden?"
Mhm.
That night, Xaden reappears, but is badly beaten. So we can have a "Who did this to you" moment. But she says it instead of him saying it. And then he can say, "Your mom."
And it's not a joke, we promise. It'll be less funny. There's no your mom jokes in our universe. We're keeping that from the original book, which I actually don't know if that's true. There may be your mom jokes in Fourth Wing.
So seriously, not as a mom joke, he probably would tell her something like, "It doesn't matter because one person is much like the other," and can make a speech about how he can do everything right but will still be a target because he embodies what they hate. So we can learn that Sagail was able to negotiate his release because it's the dragons who are in charge and she was able to get him freed. We can also have a conversation where he tells Violet that he's proud of her for bonding a dragon. And she can say that she'll miss being part of his flight crew and that she blah 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 will miss him, and then he can say, "Don't you know?" And then we find out that their dragons are mates.
Oh my god, their dragons are mates. Yeah, so we keep all that stuff. It's also cool because like we find out that they're together right as they're like kind of trying to rebuild their relationship. So it's like, oh no, things are weird for us because like my mom wants to kill you and had to lie for you and it got us in trouble. But oh my god, our dragons need to hang out now. That's crazy. It'll be cute. We have them much more together at this point when they find out, and I think that's nice.
Yeah, I think that's nice too. Their relationship should be growing instead of just being pushed back to square one over and over again. So Violet then enters the officer classes, which she is now because she's a rider.
Oh, wait, we forgot this very important note, which is maybe they almost kiss. Maybe this is almost their kiss moment. But then he pulls back and says that it'll be a bad idea, which Violet doesn't understand, but we, the reader, kind of like do. I don't know.
Because it's who her mom is, not because their dragons are bonded.
Yeah. Like, like, oh my God, we have so much in common. Our dragons are bonded. Maybe we should kiss. No, we can't because we're on different sides of the war. But, just like a fun little scene.
Yeah. So Violet then enters the officer classes, which she's now an officer because she's a rider, and she learns leadership roles. Xaden is also in this class, but is distant from her, like feels very distant. So she is kind of confused by this because they almost kissed in that scene before. She's also constantly drawn out to Taryn. So sometimes maybe he calls her, sometimes it feels unintentional. Like she realizes she's walking to him halfway there. She talks to him about it, and he says that their shared mental link is growing. And there's also a growing buildup of magic. He tells her that it's unintentional on his side too, but that she is kind of like this symbiotic parasite now, and that she'll become more and more dependent on his magic as she ages. Which again is why the riders die when their dragons die. She is both intrigued and conflicted about this feeling. She also feels multiple emotions from Taryn throughout her day, which makes it difficult to focus. She gets hungry. She gets so hungry that she leaves class to go eat and gets angry out of nowhere. She gets tired when she shouldn't be tired. And she records her experience and asks Taryn if he feels her emotions and her needs as well. He says that he does, but just to a lesser extent. So this would all be interspersed within other scenes, but it would show that much stronger connection than is shown in the book.
So we just don't see Jack for a while, thank God, because he doesn't have a dragon. But then he, of course, has to show up again because this book will never get rid of him. He lashes out at Violet, blaming her for her failure with Xaden, and he blames her for why he doesn't have a dragon because he had to miss threshing. We learn that he was the one who fucked up Xaden, but like Xaden like broke his kneecap or, stabbed him somewhere like the spleen. So he got hurt that night. So like Xaden got beat up and so did Jack. And then Jack missed threshing. And it's like his fault, but like in true bully fashion, it's her fault,
Mhm.
So they just like fight. She thinks she's gonna die, but then Zayden appears because of their dragon spawn, and then Jack gets away with it because he's a villain and he threatens them. If they say anything, he will say that they attacked him first because both of them are kind of right now on the outs with the Empire. She got kicked out and they don't like him to begin with, so they'll take Jack's word over their word.
Violet will at first say that she thinks he's bluffing and says, "Oh, we need to go wake up the commander, who's not a student, who is actually an adult because adults run this place, not students." Xaden will then say, like, we cannot go there. And they go back and forth, but Xaden is finally able to make her understand that his word is always going to be questioned by the leadership. And because of their dragon's relationship, hers now is going to be questioned as well. So she has this moment of realization, surrounding all this, and then she agrees with him that they won't tell.
So Lydic is going to start following her around just like before. She'll question him. He says that Xaden asked him to do it. And then Violet is like mad because it's like, hey, we were friends first. I didn't realize that you were Xaden's friends first, not my friend first. But then we learned that Lydic, Riddick Liam, was protected by Xaden when they were hostages as children and that he owes his life many times over to Xaden. Violet feels like a little betrayed, but because they're kind of really close right now, it's like not a real one.
She's just angry.
Yeah, she's like,
I'm not weak, because that's an issue for her.
this could be a thing where Taryn's kind of grumpy about everything, so she's really grumpy about everything.
But she also has that real trigger about being perceived as weak. So I think it could also be that where she's like, I thought you didn't perceive me as weak. And you're saying by doing this, by giving me a bodyguard, that you think I'm weak and need protection too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We set this whole scene up for a specific reason.
Yeah. So she runs to Zayden to yell at him because she's really angry and she feels that he doesn't trust her and trust her skills, and he lets her yell at him and she doesn't understand why at first. Why isn't he fighting back? Why isn't he defending himself? But then she gets turned on and she realizes that it's because their dragons are also getting it on and that he's feeling it too. So he's able to coach her through it, and in the end they kiss, and we were like, well, this scene needs to be more playful, I think, than the original, but that was our favorite scene in the book, so we wanted to keep it pretty much the same.
Yeah, they got a little hot and horny and they make out. And then it is the same thing where Xaden is like, consent is important and neither of us can consent, so we will go somewhere else.
Yeah. So she fumes over the next few days with Imogen and Rhiannon, who are now friends. Rhiannon then receives a letter from her family that has something to do with her family. And Rhiannon's kind of cagey. She doesn't tell them what's going on, but she's obviously kind of upset by this. But that's just a side thing. And Rhiannon, this will begin her arc as well. Violet then goes to the threshing field. She picks up the scales left by the worm and examines them. And she realizes that they have the same exact magical feel or magical signature as the wyvern or worm scales that she picked up that first time that they attacked during the war games. We can also have a whole new world flight scene where they fly with their dragons for the first time and go to see Andarna. We learn about the adopted kid situation and learn more about the dragon schism. Violet and Andarna become buds, but are, again, they are not bonded. So Xaden is sent on a flight drill in the field with the other second years. Jack is part of one of the rotating flight crews that is sent with him. And Violet really doesn't like this, but there's nothing that anyone can really do about it. And I think we can even have her suspect that this was intentional because they want some kind of tragedy to befall Xaden. She's annoyed and then decides with Taryn to follow because Taryn also wants to be near his dragon wife. They follow, and Taryn tells Violet that Sigale finds this amusing that they're sneaking around, and because she finds it funny, she hasn't told Xaden that they are following them. They watch the drill from a vantage point, and worms show up again. Violet then tells Taryn that they need to help. Taryn tells her, no, we need to wait until the right moment so we can use this to our advantage because they don't have a crew with them. They can watch the flight crews fight off the worms. One of the dragons is taken down. Xaden and Sigale pick up a few of the fallen crew, but are then forced to engage with two of the worms. Taryn then, he's entering the fray now because his dragon wife is in danger, and they fight. Violet uses her magic for this first time, which kills a worm and saves Sigale. Sigale and Xaden then return the original crew to the dragon, so maybe they were grounded or something, and they are able to all get away. They need to spread out the original crews because so many of the students were wounded and maybe some were even killed. Taryn is really excited. He's very excited about Violet's magic.
You wrote excited dad about Violet's magic, and I just want people to know that is the energy that Taryn is bringing.
Yeah, he's an excited dad. But then this is cut short when they realize that Zayden is still in trouble. So Jack has been able to stay on Sigale and is now attacking Zayden on her back. Sigale tries to do some evasive maneuvers, but really can't do much to knock Jack off without knocking off Zayden as well. So Taryn is able to drop Violet onto her back, and then she fights Jack hand to hand using those small person fighting skills that she learned and is able to kill him. She feels shock from this, not because she doesn't want to kill anybody, but because she just has never killed anyone before. So this is just the first time that she's really done that. They fly back and she is very, very angry because, she's dealing with this process of grief. Zayden then comforts her. She responds with rage. She tells him that he should be the one with a bodyguard because she had to save him again. And then this is where they would have sex.
Yeah, they should have some navigation of her hypermobility during this scene. Maybe Xaden can comment on how flexible she is or how soft her skin is. Maybe he tries to put her leg up too far and it hurts her, or the opposite, which is like for people with hypermobility, it's actually kind of nice to be at our end ranges. So maybe he pushes her legs up really far and he's like, this has to hurt. And she's like, actually, it feels kind of nice, but I need to shift positions a little bit more. Stuff like that. A fun scene. Anyway.
Yeah, it could be super cute and sweet.
Where they talk and communicate during sex instead of her just thinking about how this is the hottest thing that's ever happened ever, but she doesn't know what he's thinking or whatever.
The next day they realize, and she wouldn't know this because she's like away, but the next day they realize that Rhiannon has actually left with her dragon. And they realize it's to help her family. And it has something to do with the letter. Maybe they find the letter. She used the chaos that happened when the damaged crews returned to the college to her advantage to escape. They all know that one person and one dragon will be destroyed by whatever she's fighting. Like, she can't fight it alone. Xaden knows that if he, Imogen, and Lydic leave, they will have major consequences. But then Imogen makes a speech that he shouldn't care and that she is going to do what's right and that she's loyal to her friends before the Empire, blah, blah, blah. Lydic then also agrees, so they decide to help her as a group. And Sawyer brings his groups of flight squads that he has that network with to man their dragons. So they're not just 4 people going on 4 dragons or 3 people going on, whatever, 4 people going on 3 dragons, but they're full squads going to help her.
It's like a full squad between 4 people. There's still that element of danger where like 4 dragons fully equipped could probably do real damage, but they're under-resourced and they're going out alone. So you still have that tension.
Well, they're also untrained. They're not fully trained. They're just students.
Yeah. So there's like they're not the strongest ever, but they're still going to make a stand.
Yeah.
They've got the heart to do it.
This ragtag group. As they leave, Dane sees them. He tries to stop them and makes a speech about duty and honor, and then accuses Violet of turning her backs on these principles. She tells him that if he's gonna tattle, he better run and fucking do it because she's making her stand. She's picking her group. And this is where the climax happens.
Yeah, we didn't mention this before, but there should probably also be a scene of Tairn realizing that maybe duty isn't all that it's held up to be,
Oh, yeah.
and that he's been following what's best and orders for all of his life, and maybe his wife is right, and he should follow his heart.
That could really easily slot into the scene right before she and Xaden have sex, where she's being attacked and they're all being attacked by the worms. So he really sees how dangerous it is to keep this information hidden because it's really not protecting them. It's only seeking to hurt them and making them weaker as a country and as a group.
Yeah, and then everybody at the climax, everyone's like, "We're gonna go do it." So
Yeah.
do the climax.
They travel to where Rhiannon went, and they see a space decimated by the worms. They think that maybe they're too late, but then they see Rhiannon's dragon cresting the horizon. Rhiannon is able to beat up with them, and she tells them that she was able to evacuate most of the people in time, but that the worms are advancing. So they decide to take a stand. It is here where Violet tells people her theory that the worms are being controlled by one person, and that if they can find that person, that mage or magic user, then the worms will stop too. So then we have a dragon fight with the worms, and they do fancy tactics and figure out where the person is that's controlling them. It's a dramatic scene that we're not going to flesh out here at all.
Imagine a dragon scene, and that's it. It looks so cool. They're flying.
Yeah, it's great.
There's a shadow cresting overhead, and they look up, and it's a worm. They dive, and then somebody else dives, and maybe they like use the geometry of the scene against them because they have the dragons as individual beings instead of automatons have like more control.
Mhm.
Maybe you have scenes of Sawyer and his crew dropping a perfect bomb after Violet does like a spin move onto the dragons, or a bunch of people with pole arms doing a strafing run as they go by it.
Mhm.
Taryn takes a big bite out of a dragon and it's awful and disgusting and it's like all over his mouth, but then the dragon starts to break apart. It's real cool.
And through the process of this dragon fight, Imogen would get wounded. Rhiannon will stay with her and admit and have her admission that she was wrong about the rebellion kids and that she wants to make it right. This is very dramatic, but we don't want Imogen to die, so it'll be okay. She just is realizing that her prejudice was wrong, and this is a turning point for her character. They then feel like they're winning the battle when Taryn and Sigale both get really upset, and they tell Violet and Xaden, respectively, that Andarna must have secretly followed them and is now calling for help. They realize that she has been discovered by the worms. So they go to save her, but then Taryn is badly wounded in the battle and is actively dying. So Violet starts to feel it too, and she's realizing that she's also dying. She then hears Andarna's voice in her head for the first time, and they bond. This then gives her a magical power up that is able to also heal Taryn. Think like in the Stormlight archives whenever they say the ideals and they get that boost of magic.
It also could be that like baby dragons have a bunch of magic
Yeah.
or just maybe like more magical, which is like a normal thing.
Like a venomous snake baby.
Yeah. And just through her connection with Violet, she's able to pour that energy into Taryn and help him survive.
Yeah, like in the book, dragon babies have that really special magic. And then they are able to get the boost that they need to win the day. So, yay, they won. We have two actual endings here. Number one is that they realize that Xaden has been taken. So, Sigale is enraged. Her person is gone. She has no way of getting to him. And Violet is heartbroken. And this would be the setup for the second book. The other option is that Sigale would then disappear at the end of the battle, and they realize that she was an illusion being cast. Xaden would then speak to her through Taryn, where Taryn tells her that he saw his chance to escape and took it. He tells her to tell everyone that he's been killed, and maybe in this instance, Taryn would also be upset by Sigale because he didn't realize that she was planning on leaving too. Violet is betrayed and confused. They all realize that Xaden and Sigale have left to join a brewing rebellion that they did not know about until this point.
We don't know what the best setup for a second book is because we didn't write it.
We didn't write it, so yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not going to.
Just like we're probably not going to read the second book. So that's how we would have rewritten Fourth Wing. A lot of inspiration from all of the dragon books that we've loved. We talked about Temeraire or His Majesty's Dragon. We talked about the Summer Dragon. We also talked about Alta and Joust, which is the first book in the series. Any other books we mentioned that we want to just shout out before we finish?
I mentioned Pern, I think, at some point.
Yeah, a little bit more Pern in there. All good books except for Pern, which is it's just a book from the 60s and
Yeah.
70s and really shows its age. But all good books worth checking out if you want to get like a little bit of that. And thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening. I think we just chose to do this because we thought it would be kind of fun. And we were talking about it so much while we were actually in the act of reading, where we were like, well, what if this changed a little bit? And what if this changed a little bit? That we decided to just put it into an episode and kind of talk about it together. So let us know your Fourth Wing headcanons. I would really appreciate that. Again, we just did this for fun. We're not trying to really critically engage with it in any way in this instance. We're just talking about our ideas to you guys and what would have made it more enjoyable for us to read. And yeah, if you have any thoughts or ideas, we'd love to hear them too.
Yeah.
Or I guess if you have any fanfics that you'd like to share with us, that would be fine too. I don't know if I would have read them, but maybe I would. So,
Send them and Joe will read them.
maybe.
Just we'd love to hear if there's any like what was one or two things you would have changed from the book.
Yeah.
What are one or two things you would have changed in our story? Yeah, just let us know how you feel.
And again, a reminder, we haven't not read the sequels. So if there's something that you're like, well, that's actually fixed in the sequel, we wouldn't know that. We're really just looking at the first book. But yeah, thanks for listening. And we will be back to our normal book reviewing in the next episode.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.